people say, oh, it's about perfecting your inner consciousness, not your transhumanist material reality. Is it really, though? Is it? Where does it say you're not supposed to do that in these occult doctrines? Because this is an alternate world outside of the physical world. That's what Facebook is. This is a virtual Gnostic reality where you can make yourself whatever you want to be that's completely devoid from how you are in real life. That's fucking Gnosticism. I'm sorry. Like, by definition. Or if you just think everything here is terrible and you want to transcend, well, why don't you just fucking kill yourself? You know what I mean? Like, that's a joke. It's like, if none of this matters, the material world doesn't matter, it's an illusion, and you're just supposed to escape from it, and you realize it's an illusion. Once you do that, and then you die or something, and you escape, like, how does this make sense? To be perfectly honest. So we have the Google, Facebook, Twitter conglomerates. In order to get into their hierarchy, you have to be pro-LGBT, technocracy, progressivism. Talked about all the conservative people getting kind of kicked out or shunned. You have to be in line with Lucifer Prometheus, right? The LGBT rainbow, which represents Lucifer, the androgynous Lucifer. The technocracy, the Promethean god. It's the same fucking thing. So now we have a new world Inquisition. And people bitch about the old world Inquisition, how that was so evil and repressive. Well, let's compare it to the new world one. So instead of hunting down illuminous, shit-stirring mystic Judaizers and Freemasonry as the heretics, well, now what they're hunting down is people who are anti-abortion, people who are anti-LGBT, anti-science, right? You deny evolution, you deny climate change, you're a denier. You're a denier of the New World Christ, basically. That's what you are. You're a racist, you're an anti-Semite. That's the new Inquisition, the ADL, hunting down people who are anti-Semitic, talking about Jewish power, right? That's the new Inquisition that's being enforced through technocracy and these tech giants. So you can complain all you want about the old world. You can think that's the most repressive, awful thing ever. But is this new world, based on all of the Freemasonry and occultism that people were promoting to get away from that new world or old world, is that just leading to everything that we complain about? You might not like some of these things, but you're into occultism. But who cares? You're neutralized because you're still fighting the old world. The New World Order oligarchs don't care if you're an anomaly or anything like that. Go ahead and play in your magical occult sandbox. Do you really think they give a shit? Based on everything that we've looked at in this entire series. Again, I'm not trying to be mean or something. I'm just trying to be honest about this stuff. Is that really going to help? Or is looking towards some of the wisdom, the universal wisdom of old world Catholicism, however much you want to invest into that, I'd say that at least looking towards that direction is a better way to go than trying to learn all of this alchemical occult mysticism and practicing magical rituals based on Enochian magic or Crowley magic in your room and trying to escape the destruction of the West and act like it's not such a big deal, you know? So that kind of wraps up the history part. So the last thing I'll get into, let's just take it back to some doctrines of old world Christendom and see, this is supposed to be the lie. This is supposed to be what holds you back in Gnosticism and occultism. This is the Satan of occultism. Well, let's see what their version of Satan is and see if we can draw any parallels to anything going on here at all. So this is supposedly the false Christianity that Lucifer liberates you from. So let's see if there's any wisdom of the old world and their teachings on Satan, the adversary. Isaiah 14:12. Lucifer, Venus, It's people will say, oh well, the word Lucifer in this passage, it was added, and it's just the morning star. Well, no shit. The morning star is Venus. Venus is Lucifer. It's fucking Lucifer. People who try to debate like it's not really talking about Lucifer or Satan, like, doesn't make any sense. If you understand occultism, it makes sense from either viewpoint. Venus is associated with Lucifer. So why can't that be associated in the old world too? This is where Lucifer's fall happens, and it says that he weakens the nations. He doesn't want nationalism. He wants multicultural paradises as a code word to destroy old Christendom. So he's weakening the nations. That's what Satan does in the old world. 2 Corinthians 11 and verse 13 through 15. The false apostles of Satan will masquerade as angels of light. Think about the United States, the United Nations following the Luciferian doctrine, and the UN's all about love and light and peace. And we're going to bring this grand harmony out of conflict to the age of Aquarius, right? The revolutionary, progressive Aquarian mindset. And Satan's angels of light, they are pretended servants of righteousness. They'll always claim righteousness. They'll say, we're doing this for good. We're doing this for humanity. We're going to liberate humanity from this old repressive regime. That's how awesome we are. We're just love and light. And that's what we're about. Great, fine. You can say that all you want, but what's the real world reality? So they pretend to be Christ, right? So this is the equilibrium Christ. Oh, all the gods are the same. You just got to view them for this UN Luciferian doctrine. So, old world saying that's just a fucking lie to enslave you. Ezekiel 28:12. Satan was made or created, the created being, right? Man's created, Satan's created. That's why Vatican II, you turn to the creation instead of the creator. He was created as the seal of perfection, full of wisdom and beauty. And he was the anointed cherub who was in Eden. So, this is Satan before the fall, created in perfection to glorify God, had all kinds of wisdom and beauty, musical talent. I mean, this is what Venus is, right? Venus is wisdom, harmony, beauty, music, perfection. So this cherub was in Eden. And people say like, oh, well, they're talking about the king of Tyre or Babylon here. The stupid Christians don't realize. Are you fucking kidding me? Like, that's the whole point. Satan is the spirit behind specific nations and leaders. And so when you're talking to the king of Babylon or Tyre and saying that you were in Eden and a cherub, well, who the fuck are they talking about? Like, these are the dumb arguments people will use to say that these things have nothing to do with Lucifer. If you understand the theology, this makes so much more sense than all of these things trying to debunk these things. So, what do we have with the Illuminati and their doctrines? Not the Protestant version where they're eating dead babies and, sacrificing virgins on pentagrams and all the Hollywood shit we see. What about the Enlightenment doctrines? Voltaire, reading Albert Pike, reading Blavatsky. They all sound very grand, beauty, wisdom, all endowed in their doctrines. But is it all a lie? Just like Voltaire, saying, I'm basically professing to this and lying about it and trying to install my wisdom and beauty doctrines. And this is the anointed cherub who was in Eden. That's the one that tempted Adam and Eve in the story. So that's the wisdom of Satan before the fall. And think about it. If you are the most intelligent, beautiful, perfected being, but you go to the darkness and create it within yourself in pride and arrogance, then all of that will be used. That will be even more destructive because of how smart and wonderful and beautiful you are. And that's exactly how people get fooled. They get fooled by people who have great personalities. They speak well. They're eloquent. They're clever. Like Crowley was very clever. But to me, the foundations of his doctrine are incredibly destructive, but people just keep making excuses for him. Oh, he's misunderstood. Fine, I'll grant you he's misunderstood, but even when you understand him according to the old terms, I still think he's destructive. All sex acts are equal. Like, are you kidding me? That's what gives rise to pedophilia. You know, it's like, oh, well, as long as people consent, well, we'll get into Wilhelm Reich and some of these psychologists promoting infant sexuality as long as they consent to things. Like, are you fucking kidding me? So, despite all of the Mercury cleverness, that's what Satan is. But it's all to glorify their own ego and pretend that it's nice and spiritual and enlightening. So, moving on, Revelation 12, 7 through 9. There's a war in heaven, and this comes to earth, as above, so below. Satan and his fellow accusers of God's people, because he's the accuser or slanderer, hates humanity, hates God, full of pride, hubris, but still very beautiful. And that mask of perfection and light is what you see, but you don't see the darkness. You see the flowers, not the knife behind the back. And until you start moving in the old world direction, you're not going to see the knife. Or when you might see it happening to others, you'll still be looking at the flowers. So, Satan deceives the whole world. So think about, from this perspective, the Catholic perspective, who are the groups that hate it, that have a problem with it? The Protestants. And they're all different reasons, but they all have a common enemy. The Masons, the Jews, the atheists and Enlightenment folks, Age of Reason people, and all the Illuminist occultists. So the Western world, which guides the rest of the world, for better or for worse, whether it's old or new world, well, the new world is all of these groups hating the Christ of the old world. So, is that deceiving the whole world because the West is in charge of the world? So as wide is the gate to hell and narrow is the gate to truth? I mean, if you're going to argue that the Christ of the Bible is some sort of Gnostic Christ, but look at all these teachings and how true they ring from the old world. Forget, like, did Jesus exist? Were the Gnostic Gospels found before or after? Forget all that shit. What does it say? What is the teaching? And how do you see it manifesting in the world? All of this shit describes a new world order. Like, to me, that's objectively true. There might be some different things here or there that you can debate upon, but generally speaking, the core principles here are incredibly profound. Isaiah 5:20. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil. They substitute darkness for light and light for darkness, bitter for sweet, sweet for bitter. So this is like Crowley and occultism. Good and evil are equal, right? There's an equilibrium of the two. They're pretty much the same. The left-hand path, the right-hand path, they all lead to enlightenment. Is that not reflected in inversion of this? Of course, evil in occultism is that. Good is just liberation from that, whatever it might be. So there you go. You're equilibrating the old world. If you adhere to any old world principles, that's fine. But you have to allow equality for the new world principles as well. That's where the Protestants are allowed to be the prominent force in Western Christianity, because they're still protesting that. They don't want that and anything having to do with it creeping into the state. So that neutralizes them, that equilibrates them. Revelation 22. The ancient serpent of Genesis is bound for 1,000 years and could not deceive the nations, but was released for a little time or season. Now, the little time, I don't know. I don't really know what that means. It's kind of interesting. But I'm just saying, think about this in parallel to what we talked about. The ancient serpent of Genesis, bound for 1,000 years. there's 1,000 years of church history that Anatoly Fomenko is trying to erase, which we'll get to next when we talk about chronology. And here it says Satan will be bound for 1,000 years. And that's the 1,000 years of old world Christendom, it would seem, where that got its reign. And then Satan's let loose. He does what he does. He slanders. He's disguised as light. He weakens the nations. He does all of these things once he's let out. And think about, the Renaissance, the Enlightenment, all of these things starting to creep out. And then now we're seeing the fruits of the New World Order come to fruition, where all of this shit, the weakening of the nations and the shitstorm of turning brother against brother, is really coming to its fruit being born. And so this is why I think at this time we need to start making some distinctions here. Otherwise, where all this is going, hey, if you like where it's going, you're into it, then okay, do what thou wilt. But if you don't like it, I think you should seriously consider finding value, at least, in this viewpoint. So a little time or season, I don't know. Depending on when you think that 1,000 years might be. 1313, the Templar thing. Maybe later. I really don't know. It seems like there's been 5, 6, 7, 800,000 years after it. I don't know if that's a little time or season. Maybe it doesn't quite fit. But I do think that it's just an interesting parallel to what we've talked about. And then lastly, let's bring it back to the beginning. Genesis 3:22, the 3:22 of Skull and Bones, in my opinion. Now mankind has become like one of us, knowing both good and evil. And the point of this is reaching out your hand and searching for the tree of life. You'll never be able to do it without Christ. But the serpent says you can. So you're cursed by trying to find immortality in our current realm. But because of the fallen state, whatever you believe about why that is, mankind can't become God, but can have contentment here if we follow and obey certain basic rules and adhere to them. It can be a struggle. It's not going to be easy, but you give a shit about the truth and you strive for it. And when you fall, there's forgiveness, but you have to admit that what you've done, or you've been fooled by the serpent. When you do that, that actually gives you freedom, despite the curse of the serpent and death in our mortal lifetime. So that's pretty much the teachings of old world Catholicism. And I don't think you can say with a straight face that this is all just stupid and does not apply or describe in any way, shape, or form all of the New World Order shenanigans we've talked about throughout this entire series. So thanks for watching. And again, just trying to be honest about this stuff, not trying to be mean or offend people. All of these things that I'm kind of displaying and critiquing, I've fallen for myself, and probably still am in many ways. But I'm trying not to. And I'm trying to hold myself accountable for things and take a bit more responsibility about things. And that's what I feel like I need to do. When promoting things and information online, I can't give a Freemasonic viewpoint any of it anymore because of the state of the world and where it's going. And if I'm going to follow my conscience, then I have to say I think that old world Christendom has a lot more truth in it than all of these occult doctrines that you read in people like Manly Palmer Hall, Crowley, Blavatsky, Pike, etc.